Welcome to Forgotten Hollywood on Therapy Cable. Here is the Hollywood backstory. Films about soldiers assigned to combat were extraordinarily popular during Hollywood's golden age. John Wayne, Robert Montgomery, Clark Gable, and Cary Grant starred in these stirring sagas. Today's story is about a different kind of military assignment.
In the heart of our nation's capital, memorials to America's founding fathers stand tall for all to see. The history of these great men reach back in time to the very birth of our country, and their stories are known far and wide. But how do you tell the story of someone nobody knows?
Welcome to Forgotten Hollywood, streaming on the Therapy Cable channel. Here's your host, Manny Pacheco.
Welcome to our program. Forgotten Hollywood on Therapy Cable is part of a franchise that includes a book series that shares America's story through Hollywood's golden age, a documentary that's currently in production, a weekly radio show that airs on 90.1 FM KBPK, and a blog site at ForgottenHollywood.com. Today's guest is Ethan Morris, the executive producer of a new fascinating documentary called The Unknowns. The story chronicles the fine work of an almost invisible army group that quietly guards the tomb of the unknown soldier. He is also badge number 548 of this prestigious guard duty, serving from 2005 to 2006. This is a fascinating and almost forgotten story that needs to be shared.
Just across the icy Potomac River, inside Arlington National Cemetery, the tomb of the unknown soldier rests atop a granite plaza, guarded by soldiers of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. This sacred shrine is protected by these sentinels 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, regardless of the weather.
Welcome to our program, Ethan.
Thank you, Manny, so much for having me here today.
We're really thrilled to hear your story and what led to a documentary. Before we talk about the documentary, we got a taste of it in the opening. Let's find out about Ethan Morris and why the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is so important to you and what led to military service, to documentary film work.
Well, I grew up in northern New York and on a farm. And after growing up there, I decided, I wanted to get into Hollywood, entertainment, get away from the cow pastures and the tractors. So I ended up, the only thing that was close to entertainment, and I grew up on old movies, classics, was a radio station. So I went and offered my services to 99 Hits FM, and I asked just, hey, can I be, an intern for free? And they gave me an internship, and I just loved it. I loved just radio, music, and at the same time, I was a Civil War reenactor. And the movie Gods and Generals was starting to film in Virginia. So I applied to be an extra and was accepted. And while we were filming, 9/11 happened. And it just kind of struck me, really close to home. I was, of course, from New York, not New York City, but it just struck all of us. And we shut down filming for a while, and there was a memorial service, and I made so many good friends there, and got to meet legends like Robert Duvall, Jeff Daniels, and it was just an incredible experience. But one of the days off, my good friend John Burt brought me into Washington, D.C., and he asked me, have you ever seen the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier? And I told him I hadn't, and I was 19 years old, and we went there, and I went to visit, and I just wept and realized that there was something great that was happening there. And
at that time, did you enlist? Or?
I started, since I grew up on a farm, I had to clean up my life. Your family kind of depends on free labor. Yes, family, I'm letting the word out. So I was a family of 5 kids and stuff. So I ended up telling them, look, I'm going to join the Army. I want to, of course, fight against terrorism. So I talked to my recruiter and asked him, how could I serve at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier? And he told me, there's no way you could ever serve at the Tomb Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I said, that's fine. I want to be an infantry airborne and send me overseas. So I went down to Fort Benning, Georgia, and that's where they turned boys into men and joined up in the infantry. And while there, I would like to say it was due to my awesomeness, but it wasn't. We don't really know how. The Army is crazy, and they recruited me to go to the Old Guard. And I should show, I brought some pictures and photo album. This was actually when I enlisted. Oh, wow. And you can see I was still happy, still smiling, Ethan. Try not to ever lose that smile. And I joined up there, and they recruited me to go to the Old Guard. And I asked the sergeant, could I serve at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier? He said, I doubt you have what it takes, but you would be going to the Military District of Washington and helping with different presidential ceremonies, and who knows where the Army will assign you.
Did you see any fighting?
I did not. So okay. I did my infantry training, and it was in basic training, that they actually recruited me to go to the Old Guard. Basically, it was my good looks, my tall stature, these things like that. I can tell you, am I joking? Yes.
What is the Old Guard?
The Old Guard is the oldest active infantry regiment. It was actually founded by George Washington. Okay. So it's been around from the Revolutionary War, and very, very prestigious. So now they do all the ceremonies in D.C. So I actually participated in President Ronald Reagan's funeral. I was assigned to a casket team, and I want to show you a couple of pictures of that, Manny. It conducted over 300 burials in Arlington National Cemetery, and I was just very moved, and I figured I would probably never leave burial detail, casket detail, and did that for 13 months, and with great pride. And we would fly to Dover, Delaware, and unload transfer cases, as we called them, but bodies coming back from Iraq. And during that time, I always thought about Hollywood. And I told everybody, when I get out of the Army, I'm going to go to Hollywood. Go to Hollywood. And my sergeants, yeah, whatever. So I decided that I would go to what we actually called Hollywood within the Old Guard, and it was the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And I volunteered for that for my final 18 months of service. And we called it that because thousands of people a year, or millions actually, visit the tomb and take pictures. And
let's back up a little bit. You said at Arlington, is that where you had mentioned before we started filming that some of the some famous folks are buried?
Yes, yep. And once I went to the tomb, I started learning more about that, because at the tomb, so many people would come in and ask questions like, where is Audie Murphy buried? And we would have to tell them, oh, right over here. And Audie Murphy, of course, talk about forgotten Hollywood, a Hollywood legend.
Well, before he was a Hollywood legend, actually, he was the most decorated serviceman of World War II. In fact, he received a Hollywood contract because of his service and his decorations that he received during World War II.
I knew that he was the most decorated. I did not know that that is what led to his Hollywood career. Lee Marvin is buried right there near the tomb also. So at night we would go running through the cemetery to learn where all these famous people are, generals, presidents, and I'd just see Lee Marvin, Audie Murphy, and think, I'm going to go to Hollywood. So I finally, and while I did want to share one picture, that's my squad at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I finally earned my badge number 548, which you mentioned. And after my time there, I moved out here to California. Just
based on curiosity, did you ever get back to that recruiter and say, I did exactly what I planned on doing?
I did. Sergeant Eric Haynes, I thank you, and I thanked him many times. We've stayed friends. And everybody says, you hate your recruiter. Recruiters lie. He didn't lie. He steered me straight. And I thanked him numerous times throughout my life, just because I love our country. And I loved the ability to actually serve in the Army.
He had to chuckle because that was your goal the whole time.
He did. He just thinks it's a miracle.
Now, what became of, before you went to Hollywood, what became of Gods and Generals?
So Gods and Generals, of course, was made, financed by Ted Turner. That was released. It didn't do too well. Of course, we had just started the War on Terror. The whole country was kind of upside down. And that, I think it was a $71 million project. And I loved it. I've stayed very close with a lot of the contacts that I've made there. And that really helped me realize that, I want to go to Hollywood. Yes, the military and 9/11 kind of was the inserted in there. But on my last walk, one of my good friends and my producing partner on The Unknowns, and he's done all the heavy lifting, his name's Neil Shradetsky, he filmed my last walk, and, we have footage of him telling me, hey, I'll see you in Hollywood.
Do you find that a lot of folks, their lives were disrupted by 9/11? In other words, you had this goal about coming to Hollywood, and then all of a sudden you're in the service. Do you find that in talking with some of your cohorts that they too maybe hadn't planned on serving, and all of a sudden they put their life on hold and then became members of the military?
Yes, I would say yes. And I think that happens in every generation, whether it be the Great War to end all wars, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. The draft, of course, was in place then. Right. Now, since post-Vietnam, we've been the volunteer army. And all my friends who I met in my cohorts in basic training, some of them even had, degrees, and they just felt a deep sense of patriotism and that wanting to, of course, stand up for the average American and our American way of life. And I think The Unknowns, which, of course, the documentary is about, features that because the unknowns are going back to World War I, World War II, Korea. There thankfully are no unknowns since Vietnam. There was one, and there are a couple of unknown soldiers, but DNA, they're able to know that, okay, this gentleman, this remains, is could be one of 10 people, and they're in the armies in the process.
And I do want to talk about the documentary. In fact, we want to spend a lot of time talking about the documentary, but you just said something that's very important. The reason why, because of DNA, isn't that also because of the efforts in Congress by somebody like John McCain?
Yes. Oh, yes. The efforts, the Vietnam unknown was interred, and of course, the world wanted to honor the unknowns. But efforts like John McCain and Congress, wait a minute, we don't want anybody to be unknown. Sadly, from World War I, World War II, Korea, there's so many thousand, and they're kind of spread out across the continents, the world. So we will have those unknowns. There's really no way to find out. And to the justification of the Army, in 1998, when they disinterred the Vietnam unknown, there was a flight jacket and, femur, a little piece of bone fragment. I mean, those are the unknowns, and that's why we have them. They're people that have kind of been obliterated, and they've gave up their identity for our freedom, for our ability to sit here and talk about Hollywood and movies and to enjoy our iPhones.
And it also gives closure to the family.
Yes, that gives them a central place where they know the country has remembered and is remembering. And there's boys there now, and there have been some women as well who have guarded the tomb of the unknown soldier and given the country that closure. And I think the most impactful times for me while I was there, literally only 7 times, I can count them, on my hands, people whispered over the railings, thank you for your service. And I would weep, I'd just sit there and silently cry because it was so hard. It was the hardest thing I've done. Marriage is pretty hard. It's right up there, actually. Honey, I love you. She's been very supportive, my wife Elizabeth, in making the movie, because we did raise some money, Kickstarter, to actually fund the filming, but of course we used up that money to film in DC. So for the last couple of years in post-production, my partner Neil and I have just been working double jobs. I work now at 90.1 FM, KBPK. That's where we met with right. Forgotten Hollywood. And then I also work at KTLA Channel 5. And all of that happened when I moved out here through meeting Commander Chuck Street, who's the narrator now of my film. Good friend. He's the president of the Pacific Pioneer Broadcasting Association. And met him, and he introduced me to KTLA, and I started working there and just kind of working in the industry.
Well, just to let you know, I'm also a member of the Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters. We are going to spend treasured time with the unknowns. I think we've got a great sense of who you are. Let's take a quick break. Let's revisit another clip from the unknowns, and we'll be right back here on Forgotten Hollywood.
Over 16 million visitors tour Washington, D.C. annually, and roughly 4 million per year visit this tomb. The sentinels that guard these crypts pursue and maintain the highest Army standards in order to honor the memory of unknown soldiers who died for their country as far back as the United States Civil War. The Tomb Guard Identification Badge is the least awarded badge in the Army, and for good reason. Only 601 have been earned since 1937 because of the physically and mentally demanding training that soldiers must volunteer for to become a sentinel.
You have to put every ounce of your energy, every ounce of your time into the job that you're doing out there. A nation is watching.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
Welcome back to Forgotten Hollywood. I'm Manny Pacheco. Forgotten Hollywood on Therapy Cable. Really happy to have Ethan Morris with us. And he is the executive producer of a documentary and potentially a documentary series called The Unknowns. Talk about the documentary. You've already filmed some of the segments.
Yep.
We've seen a little bit of it, a taste of it. What are you trying to convey?
So what we want to convey is that we want to remind, it's hard when the World War I is coming up on its 100-year anniversary, and there are no living soldiers who fought in World War I. World War II, the greatest generation, all those veterans are starting
When Tom Brokaw called. Yeah.
Yes, and of course Tom Hanks and all his efforts with the World War II Memorial and honor flights, trying to get them a place, to bring all of them back and feel honored and respected. But they're quickly disappearing. It's hard to tell a young person who's grown up on their iPhones, I mentioned that, or their Android devices, and just happy-go-lucky. There was a war that was fought for the freedom of our country and the world.
That the country was very proud to fight.
Very much so. You couldn't buy pots and pans because all the iron was going to tanks. It was everybody bought war bonds. My grandmother worked in a gas mask factory. She had the strongest wrists and hands of anybody I've ever met. All she did was spend years just turning gas masks inside out. And the whole country was behind it. So now we wanted to show that sacrifice, and the sacrifice that the young men and women who guard the unknowns go through to the generations to come, our generation.
In your documentary, do you talk about what it takes to become to be part of that detail?
Yes. What it takes, it honestly takes 100% of your attention and time. And that's what it took me 7.5 months to earn my badge. And we mentioned that it's not really about the badge. It's about the guys and the men and women who have died for our country. But the badge is just something that once you've earned it, you realize just how much it's about the men and women who have given their all.
This is a stoic detail. How do you bring out the drama in a documentary?
Well, we were working with Discovery Channel to try to do actually a series. And the Army had given us permission. Okay, yeah, we could film for a year because training takes so long. So we went and filmed initially, came back, and we were working with the Discovery Channel trying to kind of get them excited about going back and filming and following some guys. And they mentioned that it's just it is so stoic that it wasn't conducive to their format. And they made the right call on that. We realized that. And so now what we're doing is we're making a feature-length film documentary where we can show the depths of their dedication, the time that it takes for them to go through the training.
Do you show visitors of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, as they do they pay attention to the soldiers? Do they ignore them? How does that work? How does that play on film?
Yeah, we don't delve too much into the visitors. There are about 4 million people a year who visit the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Usually they're very respectful, and just walking up to the plaza, you realize, wow, the greatness is happening before me. So you don't have to teach the stoicness, you don't have to teach them to be solemn and respectful. And but sometimes if the visitors do get out of control or maybe loud or obnoxious, the tomb guard who's there to set the standard will actually command them. Everyone will remain silent and standing, and remind them, look, this is a sacred, a hallowed place in American history.
What are some of the stories that you have uncovered in doing this documentary?
The stories, one of the neatest stories was a gentleman by the name of Staff Sergeant Buelna, and we filmed him quite a bit. And he was in the National Guard, and it's kind of my story. He asked, how can I go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier? And they were told, well, you can't. As a National Guard, you'd have to enlist active duty. He said, okay, well, I'll do that. And he enlisted active duty, and you can't really control where you go. And the Army sent him over to Afghanistan, Iraq. Each time, they would tell him, well, if you re-enlist, we'll send you to the old guard. And he re-enlisted, and they didn't do that. They kept him over there for another deployment. Finally, after 12 years, he actually got to go to the old guard. And then he had to re-enlist while he was there in order to go down to the tomb. And he did that. And great friend. He's now done with his service at the tomb because it takes so long to produce a documentary. And he's now overseas, back in Iraq.
Two questions. One, how many folks have actually guarded the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and how many do you capture in your documentary?
Hundreds have guarded. Yeah, hundreds. It was the badge was started in the 50s. The old guard started guarding in the 40s. Before that, some civilian guards were there, and then the Army took over in the 30s. The old guard, like I said, in the 40s. In the 50s, they started the badge. I'm badge number 548 since I've been out, and I've been out since 2006, so we're coming up on 10 years. They're almost up to 630. So I think they're at 632 now.
Very small detail.
Very small detail. Now, out of the 4 guys who I volunteered with, I was the only one to earn my badge. The next group had 16 guys. Only 3 earned their badge. It's very high attrition rate. So hundreds have guarded because you do go out and you guard as you're trying to earn your badge, and usually in the overnight hours and the early morning hours or evening hours. So actually hundreds more have actually served there, but actually earning the badge has been 632, like I mentioned. It's the only badge in the Army that can be revoked, which is kind of a stark realization, and we delve into that in the documentary as well.
Ethan Morris is the executive producer of The Unknowns, and what we're trying to find out is, obviously you're currently in production. Are you looking to raise more money, and what can people do to see, I think, what I consider a very important story that needs to be told? How can we go about doing this?
Well, we're coming down the final stretch, and we've had to say that as we go. We're doing color correction. All the sound is done. The edit's done. Our composer, Steve Williams, is taking over. He actually has played the piano for John Williams.
All composers are named Williams. I was just going to say that.
He works for John Williams. No relation. But he actually composed the music for the short feature that we released, the 5-minute. And that's more of like an extended trailer. But he's getting the whole film in a couple of weeks. He'll start doing the original score. After that, we're hoping to do some advanced exclusive screenings around Veterans Day. If you're interested, of course, go to our website, theunknownsmovie.com, drop us an email. We've had a lot of people reach out to us, veteran organization up in Santa Barbara, Ohio, Honor Flight, different places. And we want to partner with them and do these exclusive free screenings around Veterans Day. Now, we're looking for Memorial Day 2016 release.
Are you looking to raise any capital
Yes, on our website, theunknownsmovie.com, we're selling like polos, which actually I brought you one. Been holding it here, hoping to get around to this. I brought you a polo, Manny. Thank you. I appreciate your support. And it just says the unknowns and, supporter. And we also have hats and different things. Then there's a donation button there. All of the funds are going to actually the finishing costs of the film. It will be finished one way or another. Like I said, either I'll work another part-time job. My producing friend, we're still taking up different shifts all around at KTLA. And it will be released around 2016 Memorial Day.
You're real close then.
Oh, we're very close. We were hoping for a Veterans Day release, but then it just takes, now that it's done, it takes about 6 months for different channels to actually plan the slate and stuff. So we've been talking to the military channel, which is now the American Heroes channel.
Right. I love that channel.
Yes,
Absolutely.
We've been talking with them. They've actually reached out to us, which never happens in Hollywood.
Well, it's right in your breadbasket.
Yes.
I mean, because and they're looking for content.
Yep. So they're very interested. We're, of course, trying to knock on the doors of the History Channel, National Geographic. It's hard to knock on doors. So we're looking forward to partnering with American Heroes Channel.
As an independent documentary filmmaker, are you coming up against any kind of issues to try and get this distributed?
It's hard to get anything distributed, as you know, and I'm looking forward to Forgotten Hollywood documentary, and it's just so hard. And I know you've had fundraisers and you're moving it forward. No, everybody loves our project, and there's everybody has a grandfather, a grandmother, somebody, a father, a son who has served in the military, or maybe they've come here and they've immigrated to America and they understand, hey, my wife's Filipino. You know what? The American military helped her country so much, and her grandfather ended up joining the armed forces.
And this is a story that transcends politics.
Oh,
I mean,
of course,
Republicans, Democrats, anybody can get behind this because
Yes.
we're all Americans.
Yes,
and we can all enjoy the story that's told.
Yep, very much non-political. And what's interesting is even the military.
Yeah.
Yes, apolitical. And being in the Army, I had very conservative views, and I had friends and good buddies who had very liberal views. And the same thing, we're all there together, one mission: the safety and the freedom of our country. So
this is another mission.
Yes,
to get this documentary out there for people to see. And I guess as we close, and we're going to look at another clip, I guess the real important question is, what do you want folks to walk away from after watching The Unknowns?
We would like definitely people to walk away realizing that freedom isn't free. And we have that on different monuments. We have that, in different places and mantras. And we all say it around Veterans Day, around Memorial Day. Oh, we support our veterans. We are thankful for our freedom. But to realize even today, right now, there's a man or a woman guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier. They're there honoring our fallen heroes. They are doing that. They're literally a living documentary. They're a living
a testament
right. to our freedom. And I think that's what we want to remind people of, is not only is freedom not free figuratively in the past, but freedom is not free today. Today, there's somebody on the mat, as we call it, and they are remembering the guys that are not forgotten as long as we provide the mission.
Let's take one last look at The Unknowns.
The sacrifice and dedication required to become a guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is awe-inspiring, and has only been the subject of rumor and myth until now. This documentary series will give the world a unique look inside the lives of this honorable brotherhood of soldiers, and for the first time in history, the public will get a chance to see the depth of dedication that tomb guards embrace to pay their respects to those who gave all for freedom.
I'd like to thank our guest today, Ethan Morris, the executive producer of this stirring documentary. I just cannot wait to see it. I hope that you invite me to one of the screenings. I would be delighted to attend and see what I consider an important story that needs to be told. Thank you so much, Ethan.
Thank you, Manny, so much for having me here. And of course, you will be invited.
I love that idea. And thank you for joining us here on Forgotten Hollywood on Therapy Cable. And remember, let's never forget. I'm Manny Pacheco.